Welcome to another week of Salute Your Sports. Common Enchev, Drew Brackett, Tom Castleman. We've got a big show today, our full NBA playoff preview. I'll even get to talk some soccer, Drew some golf. Guys, I can't wait.
Yeah, and for all the wrong reasons, talking about the first place Chicago White Sox out in the AL Central. Kind of sort of like hate looking forward to that. So that'll be a fun topic to cover as well. And of course, going over our locks of the week, statements of the week, going to be a fun show.
Absolutely. We'll start right off with the NBA playoffs, guys, in full swing. Start with the Lakers-Suns series. Lakers, the 7th seed. The Suns, the 2 seed. Suns won game one by 9, I believe. So they have that 1-0 series lead. Next game is Tuesday night in Arizona. Guys, who do you think wins the series? Comment.
Yeah, this is going to be a great series. By the way, Drew, I like the 1-0. Got a little soccer verbiage there, so big fan of that for sure. First off, I'd like to say that this series is totally 50-50. I'm very conflicted in it. I do think whoever does win this series is going to represent the Western Conference in the NBA Finals. For me, the big difference in game one was DeAndre Ayton and Anthony Davis. DeAndre Ayton had 21 points and 16 rebounds. He was 10 of 11 from the field. Anthony Davis only had 13 points, 5 of 16, 7 rebounds. Davis was minus 18. Ayton was plus 16. Suns win by 9. You saw Ayton outscore Davis by 8. So the difference in that game was basically DeAndre Ayton outplayed Anthony Davis. LeBron James was not at his best, but neither was Chris Paul, who was banged up, got hurt in that game, came back. So for me, I think this series is going to get a little bit closer just because I don't think that DeAndre Ayton is going to dominate Anthony Davis this whole series. I'm conflicted as to who I'll pick. My gut says the Lakers are still going to come back and win this series, but definitely going to be a close one.
I feel perfectly comfortable taking the Phoenix Suns to defeat the LA Lakers, especially because as I was putting my notes together prior to the series over the weekend, they came out in game one and they kind of proved something that I circled as a key to the game, and that is their defense. The Suns have been a ninth in defensive efficiency in the NBA, but they were struggling down the stretch as they kind of piled up some of those wins, maybe lost a little bit of focus. They came out and showed that they had all that focus in the world. I think a huge key, even if Chris Paul isn't 100% with his shoulder, he's 100% with his mind and with rallying this team. He's only been to one conference finals in his career, never to the NBA finals. He knows he's running short on time, so he's definitely got these guys playing really, really well, really, really focused. Not to take anything away from Monty Williams, the head coach, but in terms of being a floor general, Chris Paul is that in every sense of the word. So, yeah, I mean, if DeAndre Ayton can maintain his level of play, because he's really the only guy who can match up with Anthony Davis, I feel pretty comfortable with the Suns. They looked really good, and LA looked like a really good defensive team, but we also saw they're in the bottom 25 or so in offensive efficiency, and we saw that on display as well.
Absolutely. I like the Suns as well. They still holding home court advantage. Lakers favored by 1.5 in this next game. So a total toss up. If the Suns win, they'll hold that home court advantage. So guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, real quickly on that, I think this is one of those series where the deeper in the series it gets, I think the better LeBron and Davis will play. So this is one of those series where we could see the Suns win it in 5 games. It would not surprise me. But if it does go to 6 or 7 games, which is the way I'm leaning, I think the Lakers, by the 6th or 7th game, by the crunch time, I know Chris Paul has been there, but Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, a lot of these Suns players haven't been in a tough series. So if it gets to be a tough series, I do think the Lakers are going to pull it out. Something else to keep in mind, the Lakers played really bad that first game. They missed a lot of open threes. I know they're not a great three-point shooting team, but I think they can do a little bit better. I mean, 2 or 3 more threes, and all of a sudden it's a different ballgame. And Tom, you list those Lakers offensive numbers. I know their roster is a little bit different, but that's simply because LeBron and Davis have missed a good chunk of the season. They were certainly not near the bottom of offensive efficiency last year. So I think they're definitely going to pick up their play. It's going to be a very tight series. Again, I'm probably 51-49 Lakers. I can see the Suns winning, but for the sake of making a pick, I like the Lakers to rally, probably win it in a close 7-game series. And I can see them winning tonight. We might have more on that in Locks of the Week or tomorrow night, whenever the game is. Actually tomorrow night, I think. But another
Yes.
good series, Drew, is the other one involving the other LA team.
Yeah, Clippers, Mavericks. Clippers the 4 seed, Mavericks the 5 seed. Mavericks stole game 1 in LA, 113-103. Game 2 is Tuesday nights in LA. Guys, comment. What do you think? I know you're a big Mavs guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also a big anti-Clippers guy. I mean, are you kidding me? These Clippers missed about 20 games each, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. You never know who's playing, who's not playing, and that's called karma. They tried to tank their way in to play the Lakers. Well, that didn't work so far against the Mavericks. They rested guys, so they're rested for the playoffs. Guess what? They did that last year. They barely beat the Mavs last year in that series, and that's because Kristaps Porzingis was out for Dallas. And then this time around, they're struggling mightily. I think the Clippers actually, if you look at the second half of the year, Dallas got off to a very bad start early in the season. The second half of the year, Dallas was already a better team than the Clippers. They already have the 1-0 lead. They already have pretty much the home court now since they did take game 1. And I don't even think they necessarily stole it. I simply think right now, Dallas is a little bit better basketball team. And all due respect to Kawhi Leonard, I know obviously in the NBA both ends matter, but it's a scoring league. Offense matters a little bit more, and Luka Doncic is the better player between those two. He got a triple-double in game 1. He sets up his teammates better. They're a very efficient offense and a defense that has improved the second part of this year, which has been the reason behind their resurgence. I know we've got playoff P over there. Paul George, you can never rely on him in the playoffs. So I like Dallas to win this series. I really do think this is one of those deals where Dallas is a little bit better than LA. Certainly, again, this is totally a 50-50 series. Honestly, all the series in the West are just about 50-50. This one certainly is. But for the sake of making the pick, I'm taking the best player in the series in Luka Doncic, and I'm taking the best team in the series, the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, I still like the Clippers, even though they're down a game in the series. I mean, you listed how many games that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard missed. I mean, the Clippers still ended up second overall in offensive efficiency and eighth overall in defensive efficiency, and that's without their best players. I think that they had an off night. I think you probably could attribute some of that to the fact that they were sitting, plus they had about a week off with the play-in games, the play-in tournaments that we had. As far as like the narrative goes, this one was going to be a charged one in game 1 no matter what. I mean, if the Clippers come out and win that game, it justifies the means. The ends justify the means on how they got there. And if they lose, it's the same thing. The ends justify the means in terms of how they lost the game. So I don't think it's really indicative of the overall narrative. I will say that there is a lot of pressure on Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, though, to perform, as they're the team's 2 best players. And the rest of the depth is okay for LA, but not great. I mean, the role players didn't play really, really well, and Luka Doncic had a phenomenal game. I don't know if that continues for every single game of this series. I definitely think LA can battle back and win this one, but it's going to be tough, and they're going to have to really achieve their potential in order to do that.
Yeah, the Mavs shot the lights out. Clippers couldn't make a shot. Mavs had 17 three-pointers in that game, so they just shot really well. The Clippers forced 12 turnovers. Clippers only had 5 turnovers, so they took great care of the basketball, just couldn't make shots. And, Dallas made shots. Luka played well, and they won. But I see the Clippers winning this series.
So far, the first 2 picks, you guys have both went against me.
Absolutely. And it's going to continue.
I have a feeling it might. What are we thinking? Tom, what do you have in this next series?
Nuggets, Trailblazers.
Nuggets and Trailblazers. I mean, my heart says the Trailblazers. I'm all about Dame time, but my head says Nuggets. I mean, we're talking about Nikola Jokic, who's going to be the MVP. Michael Porter Jr. has been amazing down the stretch, kind of flourishing as Jamal Murray's been out into that second option. And it's just really scary what they're going to be like when Jamal Murray comes back next season. One thing that I really don't like about this Portland team is that they are one of the worst defensive teams this season. I believe that they were second to last in defensive efficiency. So they need to score a lot of points. They're a really good offensive team, and if they can keep it close, Dame time is any time pretty much. But I'm still leaning the Nuggets despite the fact that they're down a game, just because I like their overall talent. I like their balance a little bit more than Portland's, and I just don't trust Portland on defense whatsoever.
Yeah, you know how I said the last two series were 50-50, and they really are. I think this series, in my opinion, along with maybe the Hawks-Knicks series, is probably the tightest series. I would be shocked if this doesn't go 7 games. I've gone back and forth. I mean, here's the thing. Jokic is the best player in this series, absolutely. He's the MVP candidate, and although I think he's probably, in my mind, I would put Curry first, maybe Jokic second. They're neck and neck for me. But we know Jokic will win the MVP, and it's hard to disagree with what he's done this season. I think that, meanwhile, the Blazers have the best 1-2 duo in Lillard and McCollum. As good as Michael Porter Jr. is, he's a Mizzou guy. I've covered Mizzou. I've actually interacted with his brother, not him as much. But I think that the 1-2 duo is better for Portland. The biggest star is better for Denver. And it's also very different because you look at Denver, they've got, the center, the power forward, small forward. They're much more dominant there. Whereas the guard play for the Blazers is much more dominant. I think if Jamal Murray were there, I would definitely want to pick the Nuggets. I think that injury is huge for them, and they've actually played really good without him. And I think long-term that might be a good thing for them because Michael Porter Jr. develops even more confidence. But in a series like this, I think having Jamal Murray not there finally catches up with them a little bit. And I'm just wildly impressed with Lillard and McCollum and versus who the Nuggets have. I mean, their guards are so much worse. I know Nurkic isn't Jokic. I know Carmelo Anthony certainly is not Michael Porter Jr., but I think they're a little bit closer there than where these Nuggets guys are to the Blazers guard. So I'm going to go with Tom's team. I'm going Blazers in 7 games.
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to take the Nuggets probably in 7. They're the better team, although Vegas just really Nuggets only favored by 2 in Monday night's game. So it's kind of been a toss-up, which kind of surprised me. The Nuggets are the 2 seed or the 3 seed. So a little bit surprising. I think it's really close, but in the end, I think Denver pulls it out.
So I'll be happy either way.
Vegas agrees with me. I like to hear that. Thank you, Vegas.
Yeah, that's a first.
Let's go.
That's a first. They also agree with you that the Suns series is close as well. But we'll move on to the Jazz and the Grizzlies game last night or Sunday night. Heck of a game between the Grizz and the Jazz. The Grizz pulled off the win 112-109. Of course, Memphis is the 8th seed. What do you think, Common? Who's going to win this series?
Another tight one, just because of how banged up the Jazz are and just how much momentum the Grizzlies have. I think that playing game against the Warriors, Ja Morant played maybe his best game ever. I mean, he shot 50% from 3. That's a guy who's a 30% three-point shooter in the regular season, and they carried that right into Utah. Utah like 31-5 at home, best home record in the NBA. It didn't matter. Memphis actually completely dominated that game. Utah came back late in the game to make it close, but Memphis held them off at the end. I still will lean the Jazz just because Donovan Mitchell, the all-star, the best player for the Jazz, was not there game 1. They originally said he was going to play. Then they said, he's not going to play. And then reports are that he's very upset with the team for holding him out. I think he's going to come back and deliver a vintage performance. I know we saw him how well he played in the playoffs last year with all those 50-point games, despite blowing that lead against the Nuggets. I think it's going to be a close series. This one could also go 7 games. I think every series in the West could go 6 to 7 games. But ultimately, as Donovan Mitchell comes back, as Mike Conley gets more healthy, certainly the Jazz probably aren't the best team in the NBA. Maybe their record isn't quite indicative of how good they are, but I don't think it's that much of a fluke that they would lose to an 8 seed in the first round. Give me Utah to come back and win in that series. Probably the only series where the 3 of us, you two, will agree with me in the Western Conference.
Yeah, no, I think Jazz Grizzlies was the easiest pick out of this conference as well, and I like the Jazz a lot because they do match up so well. I was disappointed that Mitchell was held out of that game because he absolutely would have made a difference, and quite possibly that decision cost the Jazz a game. I don't think it'll cost them the series, but I think if you're the number one seed, especially when you have as much public doubt about you, simply because your two all-stars were the last two picks for the all-star game. Like, you have that much public perception against your ability as a team. You don't want narratives to start building and giving some of that bulletin board ammunition to Memphis that, hey, maybe we belong here a little bit more than an 8 seed otherwise would. I think that's probably like an overstated, it's fun for fans to talk about type of thing. But I think that the Jazz will have no problem coming back. They almost came back to win a game when they were down a significant margin. I think they'll be able to come back and win this series with very little issue.
I'm going to call you Mr. Narrative from now on.
I like stories so much. That's why I enjoy watching sports. I like the stories of it.
Love it. I think the Jazz also come back and win this series as well. We'll move to the East. Bucks and Heat. Start with that one. Bucks the 3 seed, Heat the 6. Milwaukee up 1-0 after a 2-point overtime victory. What do you think, Common?
This is another series that could go either way. I'll tell you guys, the rest that we'll talk about, I know there's a couple in the East that are sort of no-brainers, but this could totally go either way. You look at Miami last year, they beat the Bucks in 5 games. I know different scenario with the bubble, no home court for Milwaukee, but actually I know they have Drew Holiday in Milwaukee, but if you take a look at these teams, pretty similar roster for Miami, and outside of Drew Holiday, not all that different for Milwaukee. And Milwaukee was actually better last year than this year in the regular season, although, that doesn't mean much for them. The fact that in game 1, I know you said it's a 2-point game in overtime, but Jimmy Butler only shot 4 for 22 for Miami, their biggest star. I know he hit the buzzer beater late, but he didn't perform very well in that game. So I think this series is going 7. I think, again, you might as well flip a coin, but I'm going to go with the Bucks. They've been very good at home. I think they're a great home team, and I do think the fact that Chris Middleton hit the game winner late, I think that is very important for them because he's more of an ISO player. I know Giannis is more of a transition guy, more of when the court is more wide open. With the game on the line, I think they might have found the solution going to Middleton instead of Giannis. I think that was really big for them, and I think it's a big moment for him to give him confidence. So I think it could go either way, but I'm going to take Milwaukee to win a close series. The home court makes just this much of a difference.
Yeah, I think in order for it to be a close series for Miami, they're going to have to hold serve on their home court down on South Beach. I like the Bucks winning in game 2. I mean, you look at some of the numbers on the side. I don't really have great internet issues, so I might have these numbers a little bit off, but I think Miami shot about 40% from beyond the arc. Milwaukee just shot 16%. So we can see Jimmy Butler's numbers go up, but we could also see Milwaukee as a team, their numbers go up as 3-point shooting is really important to their offense as well around Giannis. So I like the Bucks in game 2, which means that if Miami's going to keep this as a competitive series, they're going to have to play really, really well at home and hope that somebody steps up whose name is not Jimmy Butler. That's a little bit of a concern for a roster that I think is overachieved for the talent level that it has. Like, yes, they have really good players in Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, but none of those guys are really true stars in their own right, at least not yet in their careers. I mean, they're young guys. Book is not finished on them by any stretch of the imagination, but I like Milwaukee's overall team in depth better than Miami.
Yeah, Hero has to take a step forward, I think, for them because he didn't really improve from last year. I think Bam Adebayo is borderline star, not quite there. But I mean, I probably agree with what you said there. Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll take the Bucks in 5.
In 5?
I actually watched that game a couple days ago, and they were just kind of getting unlucky at the end, and then finally Middleton was able to hit that shot. But yeah, I'll take the Bucks in 5.
All right.
Yeah, we'll move on to what's next. The Knicks and the Hawks. This was a good game. Trae Young hit a game winner with 9/10 of a second left as the Hawks win 107-105. Hawks the 5 seed, Knicks the 4 seed. 1-0 league for Atlanta. Common, who you got?
Yeah. Should I say the same thing I've been saying all week? This is what makes these NBA playoffs so exciting. I think this is another game that is a borderline toss-up, as I hope we didn't lose Tom Castleman. He's just like glued there. There he is. He's back. I thought we lost Castleman for a second. You were like
For a
glued on the
moment.
screen. But yeah, back to this series, Knicks Hawks. The Hawks had the lead early in that game one, but basically from the second quarter on, this was back and forth, and it speaks to how close these two teams are. This season, they had the exact same records, both at home and on the road, as the other team. They both had a plus 2.3 point differential. Knicks were a better team on defense, Hawks better on offense. These teams are just so evenly matched. I mean, you might as well do an equal sign. That's how close it is. My equal signs aren't very good, but I know this is greater than I learned on the show. But anyways, guys, it could go either way. I do think that the Knicks won all 3 games in the regular season. There has to be something said for that. I think the Hawks were due for a win. I think the Knicks are just a little bit better, even though Trae Young hit that incredible shot. I think Julius Randle, the way he's played this year, is a little bit better than Trae Young. I also think Tom Thibodeau is a little bit better coach in this series. I think the Knicks having home court, which they technically lost, but still they'll have more games at home. I think that helps them a little bit. I like the Knicks in what likely to be a 7-game series. I like New York rallying. I like New York finally getting a playoff series win.
Yeah, just kudos to Tom Thibodeau for squeezing every last ounce of talent out of this New York Knicks roster. But I think the return to the playoffs is going to be short-lived, much to Spike Lee's dismay. The Hawks, Common, you mentioned their records being equal to the Knicks, but they were 14-20 when they fired their head coach Lloyd Pierce. Since then, they're 27-11 with Nate McMillan as the coach. So they're one of the hottest teams in the league. I agree with you that the talent level is pretty equal, but I would take Trae Young with being the best player in the series. I like him over Julius Randle simply because, like, we just saw the performance that he put on. He took over the game, and quite frankly, Julius Randle didn't. Not to say that he can't in future games, but Trae Young as the point guard is actually going to have the ball in his hands a lot more often and have a lot more direct control on the outcome of some of these games. And I think that the Hawks get interim coach McMillan out of the first round for him the first time since 2005.
I will counter that real quickly and say that Trae Young played better in game one. Trae Young has a lot of talent. But if you look at Trae Young and his NBA career, and quite frankly, his college career too, you look at his efficiency numbers, they're not the best. And they speak to the fact that he's very inconsistent. I mean, he has the ability to hit deep shots, but he's not Stephen Curry. He's not even Damian Lillard. He's a Curry and Lillard wannabe. There are certain games where he looks like that when he's at his best. But in a 7-game series, I don't love his consistency. I know he's going to have the ball in his hands more. But Julius Randle also has a little more of that strength, a little bit of that post game.
Sure.
And I think he's got the consistency. And I think in the end, we're going to see Trae Young play well this series, but not necessarily as well, especially down the stretch as this last game. So I like Julius Randle and the Knicks. Drew, you're a Knicks fan, or at least you used to be when they had Carmelo. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I'll take the Knicks in this one. I know Trae Young had a great game in game one for the Hawks, but yes, give me the Knicks in 6.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, I'll take them in 6 as we move on to probably the series that Common says are, they're not toss-ups at all. They're probably easy picks. Nets Celtics. The Nets, of course, did they win game one? I believe they won game one, 104-93. Who you got in this series, Common?
Yeah, it's definitely the Nets. I mean, Boston was a 500 team all year, and they lost Jaylen Brown. The Nets' big three combining for 82 points in that first game. But more importantly, their defense only allowed 93 points against Boston. And I think this is a series that this might be the only sweep, maybe 4 or 5 games. I think certainly the Sixers-Wizards could also be a sweep. Look for the Nets to win in 4 to 5 games. And I'll tell you this, if their defense plays as good as they played in this last game, their team is scary. That's a scary basketball team. That could be your NBA champion. We'll have more on that in a little bit, but that's a scary Nets team. And I know those guys only played 8 games together, but man, they certainly didn't look like they've only played 8 games together, the big three. That's a scary team in the Nets. I'm scared.
Talent finds a way to mesh. Scary is the exact word I had down in my nets too, or in my notes too, my notes on the Nets. My only kind of caveat to that is that this is a pretty beat up Celtics team. You have Jason Tatum and not much else. No disrespect to Kemba Walker, Evan Fournier, anybody else on the Celtics, but they're just not at the same caliber as Jaylen Brown, who is not in this series, and that's a big impact on this series. I think if he were in the series, it'd be a really, really fun one to see. But I think that part of the reason why the Nets look so good on defense is that the Celtics just don't quite have enough. This is in a way is a perfect series for the Nets where there is some pressure. They are going up against a legacy franchise. It's the playoffs. They can get into a rhythm and really try to hit their stride heading into that winner of the Bucks or Heat series. So Nets look really, really good. I'm excited to see what else that they can do.
Yeah, I think you were all correct. Nets in 4 for me in that series. Moving on to the Sixers Wizards, the 1-8 matchup. Sixers won 125-118. I mean, I think Philly in 4, right?
I think so. I mean, I could see the Wizards stealing a game with the fact that they have Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook. Mm-hmm. If they both happen to get hot, I think the Wizards could steal a game. But I think the Sixers are way, way, way better on defense. Tom, you talked about the bad defensive teams. Well, the Wizards had the worst defense in the NBA in terms of points per game. The 76ers rolled them when they played each other in the regular season. They had control in game 1. They didn't really dominate, but they did win the game. I think Philly's a better team. They've got the better players. I think Philly wins this series. I could see Washington getting 1 game, but pretty comfortable in the Sixers winning the series for sure.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I can see a game going to the Wizards with Beal and Westbrook going off, but there are just no answers for Joel Embiid. So I like the Sixers winning this one in 5, maybe 4. Definitely not going to 6 or anything beyond that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that makes sense. And so now that we've kind of determined the first round, how about we'll kind of continue here. Who makes the Eastern Conference Finals?
Yeah, I think the Nets are just about a lock. Locks of the week, mortgage bets, lock it in. The Nets are going to the Eastern Conference Finals. They're going to the NBA Finals. Well, we'll get in that in a second, actually. But the Nets, their big three is too good. No matter who they play, you look at Philly, you look at Milwaukee, you look at Miami, teams they might possibly play. Their big three, I mean, in some of those series, they have not only the best player on the court, maybe the 2 best, and in some cases, you could argue 3 best, especially in a series. I mean, certainly Giannis and Embiid, I would say, are probably better than Kyrie, but given how they've played in the playoffs and given how well Kyrie has played in the playoffs, you can make a case that on many given nights, they might have the 3 best players on the court. And Blake Griffin is a pretty good 4th player. I know he's not the same player he was. Joe Harris, very underrated 5th player on that team. He shoots lights out from 3, and he gets his open looks. So I think the Nets are the lock to make the Eastern Conference Finals. The other finalist is very close. I think it's going to be very tough. I look at the 76ers, Bucks, and Heat, 3 teams that could all get there. Miami, probably the worst of the bunch, but they made the finals last year. They have the experience, the confidence, the great coaching, the leadership of Jimmy Butler. So I wouldn't put it past them, but I think ultimately it goes down to the 76ers and Bucks. That's going to be a close series, but I think the fact that Philadelphia is 29-7 at home, having the home court does help them. And we've seen Giannis kind of struggle in series against some teams that can D him up. Well, Ben Simmons is one of the best, if not the best guy going up against Giannis in the entire NBA. I mean, Simmons is strong, he's fast, and I think Milwaukee, as good as they are on offense, their defense is not that good. I don't know that they would have many answers for Joel Embiid, so I don't think the Bucks or Heat wouldn't surprise me, but I'm going 76ers Nets, 1-2 seeds going up against each other in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, I like the Nets a lot as well to defeat the 76ers, coming out of the Eastern Conference. I think that's going to be the most likely matchup, and it should be because it's the 1 and 2. But as we might be talking about in the Western Conference, it might not necessarily be 1 and 2. I think that the Nets, like you said, kind of just have the overall best talent, and they're rounding into having enough good depth too to kind of make up for any nights where maybe one of those big three is off. It's going to be really tough to beat a team when you can count on three different stars who can get their own shot at any point in time. Most teams in this league only have one of those guys. Some of them have two. So this is a very scary team, like we said earlier. I really, really like the Nets and have no reason to doubt their ability to make it to the finals.
Who do you like playing them? And real quickly, I will say this note: the Bucks, by the way, were 3-0 against Philadelphia in the regular season. I don't know how much you should read into that. I think they were also 2-1 against the Nets. So the Bucks had pretty good marks against some of the top teams in the East, but the playoffs are a whole different ball game. So I did make the 76ers as a slight edge over the Bucks. But who do you have the Nets playing? Because I think we're on the same page. The Nets will make the finals, but who is the other representative in the Eastern Conference Finals?
I think it's the 76ers because they have the easiest path. They've got the Wizards on this one, and then they're going to be facing the winner of what? The New York Knicks and the Atlanta Hawks. Both teams are good, but both teams are very limited in what they can do. I mean, 76ers aren't going to have a very difficult route to making it to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Sure, it's easy for them. Absolutely. I wasn't even thinking in my head. I'm talking about the Bucks, but the Bucks won't even play.
Yeah,
won't
they'll be
even
playing the
play
Nets. That'll be a series.
The Bucks won't even play the 76ers because of the seeding. So absolutely, Drew. What do you think? Are you thinking Nets, Philly, going chalk like us?
Philly definitely. Head says the Nets. Heart says the Bucks. So I'll take the Bucks.
Oh!
And then the Bucks to win the Eastern Conference.
Drew Brackett, like, how we talk about Tom having adopted teams? He's got the Blazers and the Colts as his adopted teams. I certainly have adopted the Chiefs and the Lakers. Drew's adopted team is the Milwaukee Bucks. And I'll tell you what, Drew, get off that Bucks bandwagon fast. You had them winning the finals last year. That didn't happen. There is no way the Bucks are going to beat the Nets in a 7-game series unless somehow there's like a COVID outbreak on the entire Nets roster, which is possible, but I doubt it. Give me the Nets for sure over the Bucks. No doubt about it.
I mean, Common, as soon as you said mortgage bet, you completely opened the door for Drew to come in. So we'll mark the tape roughly. What is this, about like 33, 34 minutes into the show? We'll mark the tape and play this in a couple of weeks.
Can't wait.
You're one for on mortgage bets. I think you're one for name that. So I feel okay about the Bucks. I don't have an issue picking them. As we move on to the Western Conference, Common, who do you have?
By the way, I'm heating up on mortgage bets. I got the last one right, so it's a new streak. Just like I'm heating up on locks of the week, Drew. Look out!
We should get some sponsorships.
Yeah, we need sponsorships. I think
Commons at Properties lock of the week.
That sounds great. I think like I got like all my picks right last week, minus the Grizzlies Warriors playing game. But all those playing games.
So you went 2-1. You didn't get all your picks right.
4-1. Or like 5-1. There's how many playing games? I got all the ones right in the East. They went exactly as I said. I said Pacers, Wizards, then Pacers.
Got it.
3-0, and then the West. I said Lakers, Grizzlies, and then I said Warriors instead of Grizzlies. So 5-1. I know Drew Brackett was on that Hornets bandwagon. That didn't work out for him. But this week, hopefully, I get him as accurate as last week. Western Conference Finals, I think it's wide open. I think literally, I kid you not, I think there's probably about, all due respect to Memphis, but I think there's probably about 7 teams that could all make the Western Conference Finals, and none of them would surprise me. The Blazers getting there wouldn't surprise me. Nuggets getting there wouldn't surprise me. Lakers, Suns, Jazz, Mavericks, Clippers, all those teams are so evenly matched. And honestly, injuries will make a difference. Lucky bounces, referee calls. It's that close. I think anyone can make the West. I think the 2 teams that are most likely to make the NBA Finals out of the West are actually the Suns or Lakers. So one of the 2 best teams in the West is going to be gone after round 1. That's how close it is. For the sake of making a pick, I'm going to go with the Lakers. I think they've got that incredible talent with LeBron and Davis. It's obvious they're not quite right. So I think they could lose to Phoenix. But if they get by Phoenix, it'll show that they're getting more healthy. And the deeper the Lakers get in the playoffs, the better they're going to get. And what I like about the Lakers is their defense is so good. Tom talked about it. This is the top-rated defensive efficiency team. And their defense is going to keep them in games as LeBron and Davis get better. But obviously, I think if Phoenix does beat them in the first round, I think Phoenix makes the Western Conference Finals instead of them. The Jazz are phenomenal at home. They've got the home court. That's the only reason why I will pick them over the Mavs and Clippers. But either the Mavs or Clippers teams all have the potential to beat Utah. They also have the potential to beat the Lakers, the Suns. But I think that the Jazz balance and their home court is going to carry them to the Western Conference Finals. I think we see a Lakers-Jazz series, and I think we see the Lakers beating the Jazz and making the NBA Finals, and the Jazz just coming up so close as they always tend to do in the playoffs. But certainly, you look at the star power, you look at Lillard, you look at Jokic, you look at Doncic, you look at Leonard. I think any one of these teams has enough star power to make the Western Conference Finals. No mortgage bets here whatsoever. Do not bet your mortgage on the Lakers. If you're thinking about it, just put your mortgage away. Do not bet it on the Lakers. But if you want to throw in like $10 or something, you can pick the Lakers. You can get decent odds on the Lakers making the Western Conference Finals. But it's that close. And that's what I don't think we've ever had an NBA playoff since I've been alive that I remember that there's this many close series. I think outside of the Nets and Sixers in the first round, I think almost any playoff series really could go any way.
Man, Common's putting up, $10 here. I don't know if I'd put my milk money on any of these teams to come out of the West. It's a really, really wide open conference. I'm going to assume that Donovan Mitchell comes back, pretty much completely healthy from his ankle, twisting his ankle. I'm going to take the Utah Jazz out of the West. Storytime Castleman, I really like a lot of the different lines that we have going here. Utah never won an NBA Finals. Phoenix never won an NBA Finals. Denver never won an NBA Finals. The Clippers, you just go down the list. The top four teams have never won an NBA Finals. So I like the Utah Jazz. I like them going 1-2. I kind of teased maybe a little bit going against the chalk in the Western Conference. In a way, going 1-2 is a bit against the chalk. I know a lot of people like the teams out in La La Land with the Lakers and the Clippers potentially meeting up in the finals. And perhaps if the Clippers, had their stars play a couple more games, perhaps if the Lakers don't have injuries, that would be the matchup we're talking about because they definitely have the talent to be the best two teams in the Western Conference. But I'm going to go with the chalky upset pick, which is kind of a rare phenomenon. I like the Jazz over the Suns in a just wonderful 7-game series of relative anonymity where hopefully we can all learn a little something new about some of these great teams in the NBA. And it's not just the heritage franchises on the two coastlines.
For the record, before Drew makes his pick, Tom, you just made me feel slightly better about my picks. Maybe take that $10 and double it into 20 because you talked about how these teams have never been there. That's exactly it. I know Chris Paul, for all the experience he's had, he's never made the finals. I know the Mavs are a young team. They haven't won anything since Dirk. I know the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard has been there, but not like where he's had to fully carry a team, not where the Lakers have gotten hurt, not where he's gotten a lucky bounce. Certainly as a leader of a team, he hasn't really fully done it. You can argue Toronto, but I think everything kind of bounced their way when they won the championship. And I look at you look at the Nuggets, you look at the Blazers. These teams do not have the proven track record. And I think it's possible the Lakers lose. I said they could lose the first round. But if we have these tight contested series, you've got LeBron James, a top 2-3 player, maybe the best player of all time, for sure top 3 along with Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, with all that playoff experience, with all that intelligence. LeBron James, when the going gets tough, have you heard the stats of what LeBron James's records are in Game 7s? They're really good. So if the Lakers could force a Game 7, which I think they can, I can see the Lakers. You're making me feel a little better when you're talking about all these teams that haven't done it. Well, I'm going with the ones that have done it in the Lakers and LeBron.
My heart says to pick the Clippers versus the Suns. My head says to pick the La La Land Western Conference Final. Clippers will make the final. The East. We'll go with the La La Land final. Clippers, Lakers in the La La Land final. Give me the Lakers to represent the West.
Earlier, you picked the Suns to beat the Lakers in the first round.
Did I?
Now you're picking the Lakers to make the NBA Finals. What's going on, Drew Brackett? That's indicative of how tight the Western Conference is.
That is indicative of how tight the Western Conference Finals are. Complete toss-up, I guess. So I'm just here to see the carnage.
You're a flip-flopper. That's what you are. You're a flip-flopper.
I guess I am.
That way you could say no matter what, you were right.
I don't really care, though. Give me the Clippers, Suns, and the Clippers representing. Sure.
Oh, now he's backing away from the Lakers. Bad decision, my friend. Sure. LeBron James, if you're listening,
it doesn't matter, right? Because I got the Bucks winning the NBA Finals, so the West is just obsolete.
So what makes you think? Because we're pick our NBA Finals right now. What makes you think that the Bucks are gonna win the championship? What do they have different this year that they didn't have the last couple of years when they couldn't even make the finals?
Not in a bubble and Drew Holiday.
Okay. I don't think Drew Holiday is a good player, but I don't think he's that much of a difference maker personally. But we'll see. We'll see. So you've got what? You've got Bucks and Clippers. Tom, you've got Nets and Jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And I have Lakers and Nets. So, Drew, you think the Bucks are winning. Tom, who do you think is going to win the whole thing? I think you're probably going to go the same way I'm going to go.
Yeah, no, I went Nets preseason, and I'm sticking with Nets now. It's Nets, by the way, another team that hasn't won an NBA Finals before. So going for a NBA, no matter what, I have somebody who hasn't won the title before winning that Larry O'Brien trophy.
Yeah, and they were like 4 years ago, they had like the worst record or second, something like bottom 4 record in the NBA, and all of a sudden they went from a bottom 4 team to a top 4 team in the span of 4 years. So whatever their management is doing, it's working, because they certainly sat down and convinced Durant and Kyrie to come back, and then then they got to come to the team. Then they got James Harden to come to the team. So then they got Blake Griffin to come to the team. Even LaMarcus Aldridge, who of course left because of his health concerns. But how they convinced all these guys to come, they know what they're doing over there. I think it's could be really close. I think if it's Lakers Nets, I don't know. It's 50-50. I'm going to pick the Nets for the sake of, I don't know that the Lakers are going to be there. I feel more safe in the Nets winning it because I feel safe in the Nets being there. But if it is a Lakers-Nets series, I think that one's totally 50-50 because the Nets, I actually think they're going to cruise in the Eastern Conference. I actually think as good as Philly is, I think they're going to have their way with Philly. So the NBA Finals, whoever they play out of the West, in my opinion, is going to be better than anyone they've played in the East. So the Western Conference, or rather NBA Finals, might be really the first time where we see who takes the shot when the game's on the line. Like, what happens? Like, that's when their chemistry is going to be tested. So I can see the Lakers beating them in that scenario because LeBron and Davis know how to play together, and they don't have those chemistry issues. But they do have health issues, which obviously doesn't help them. But the Nets aren't completely healthy either. They've missed a lot of games this year too. But I'm going to say the Nets win the finals because of their big 3. The Lakers still only have a big 2. No matter who makes the finals, the Jazz, the Suns, the Clippers, the Mavs, the Nuggets, all these teams have a big 1 or a big 2. The Nets have a big 3. So give me the Nets, but I'll say this. If the Lakers make it there, don't be surprised if LA steals that series over the Nets.
Well, should be an interesting rest of the playoffs then, as I will move on to golf. Yes,
absolutely. Drew Brackett's sport.
Yeah, the PGA Championship this past weekend. Phil Mickelson was a 200-1 odds to win. It was the longest odds of his career at the PGA Championship. He was an underdog to even make the cut, and he won. The 50-year-old became, what is he, the oldest?
The oldest.
Yeah, the oldest major champion at age 50. So he played a heck of a tournament, won with 6 under, won by 2 strokes over Brooks Koepka and Louis Oosthuizen. So a heck of a tournament for Phil Mickelson, and just kind of, I don't know if it's a resurgence, but just really cool for him to do that.
Yeah, I think it was a tournament where I know I'm not as big of a golfer as you, Drew, but 6 under is actually not that good of a score to win the tournament. So a lot of guys really struggled on that course all weekend, but Phil was consistent all 4 days, and that's what led to him winning it. And I think it's very impressive because you think about it, he now has 6 majors. He's tied for 12th all time, but he also had like 6 runner-up finishes at the U.S. Open. So had he won 3 or 4 of those, we're talking about 9, 10 majors, which would place him 4th all time. And I think this solidifies him for sure as a top 10 golfer ever, if he already wasn't. And I think the fact that he won it at 50 is wildly impressive. I know no one's ever done it. I know golf, obviously, you don't move around quite as much. But at the same time, though, that hand-eye coordination, a lot of that goes away with the age. So certainly one of the most impressive major wins we've seen by Phil Mickelson. And for us, I mean, growing up, like it was always Tiger was number 1 and Phil was number 2. So, without Tiger being there, I know it wasn't quite the scene as Tiger a couple years ago, but there on the 18th green, I was watching it, and a lot of fans were all over Phil, and they were cheering for him, and they liked Phil, and it was special that he won, and congrats to him winning. It was crazy because you could get him at plus 275 on DraftKings after he was leading heading into Sunday. So a lot of people actually, the Vegas didn't really think he was going to hold on despite having the 3rd round lead. Well, he proved Vegas wrong. Brooks Koepka was the favorite going into Sunday. Mickelson holds off Koepka and wins a historic PGA Championship.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot to add to the conversation, but one really cool thing I found after the tournament was over was Tiger Woods congratulating Phil Mickelson on his win, and Phil saying, "We're looking forward to having you back out on the course as well." Of course, Tiger Woods with that severe injuries after his car crashed a couple of months ago, or maybe it's just 1 month ago. Time is kind of funny in this near post-pandemic era, but that was definitely a great moment as well afterwards. 2 guys that, as you said, Kyle, have been contemporaries, despite Woods being obviously the much better player. Those are the 2 guys that have been synonymously kind of just put together, both towards the tail end of their careers, and it's great to see Phil accomplishing a monumental historic achievement. So great weekend overall.
Couple things for you, Common. First of all, you mentioned 6 under, not that good of a score. Well, keep in mind the golf course they played at, it has the highest slope rating and course rating in the country, according to the USGA, and it was named the toughest course in America in 2010 by Golf Digest. So this isn't your, run-of-the-mill city course here. This is one of the toughest courses in the U.S., and the wind was just swirling. And so, he played well. He definitely deserved it. The players didn't just play bad. I mean, they were challenged, and he certainly came out on top.
I agree with that, but I don't have it in front of me. Maybe you can research it, but look at what the past winners were. I mean, certainly the win.
Sure. I'll give you that. Okay, 13 under, 8 under, 16 under, 8, 14, 20, 16, 10, 13, 8, 11, -8, -3. I mean, it varies, but it's, on the kind of course, it's played at. Granted, when Rory won in 2012 at the same course, he was at 13 under. But yeah, the wind was swirling. So you're right. I guess it wasn't that low, but you got to give him credit. And then you said the sports books didn't believe in Phil. You're absolutely right there. And of course, the last time that I have on record that Nevada sports books lost was June of 2020, and that's because, COVID stuff. But before that, the first losing month for sports books in Nevada was July of 2013, when Phil Mickelson won the Open Championship. So I think that Nevada sportsbooks could have a tough May here as Phil. People like to bet on Phil, so could be a tough May for the sportsbooks. After paying out all that Phil money.
Yeah, I think so for sure. And that's what was crazy for me. I saw it online at various things, like at plus 275 heading into the final day when he was in the lead. So you talked about 201 odds when it opened the tournament. But I think a lot of people were betting on Phil after he was the leader after Saturday, and he still wasn't the favorite. Brooks Koepka was still the favorite heading into Sunday. I can't remember how many strokes he was up after Saturday. Now I should have written this down, but still, absolutely, Vegas was not happy with Phil Mickelson's win. I, on the other hand, was happy because I've always liked Phil Mickelson. I love the story when he tried to become a baseball pitcher for the Detroit Tigers. That was a neat story. And he's kind of like, when I think of golf, I know these days I also think of Rory and Jordan Spieth, but my first mind is Tiger Woods, and Tom said it. The second guy that comes to mind is Phil Mickelson. So very happy that he won the PGA Championship.
We'll move on to baseball, guys. Some drama in the major leagues. Who wants to tee this one up?
Yeah, Castleman, why don't you break this down as a White Sox fan? This involves you real quickly before we get into this. It's big news for Chicago baseball in general. The Cubs, by the way, taking 2 out of 3 over the Cardinals over the weekend. They've won 3 straight series. Javier Baez hitting a home run in the 10th inning. That was an exciting game to watch last night. But the White Sox, who had been doing tons of winning, they were just about the best team in baseball up until about a week ago. And we'll see if it's sort of a short, bad stretch or if this kind of spirals into more issues after Tony La Russa is not too happy with his now star player, Yermin Mercedes, after he swung at a 3-0 pitch in a blowout game. Tom, you break it down, Mr. Storyline Castleman.
Yeah, so we have Yermin Mercedes, a 28-year-old rookie, a guy who is a really positive, a really plus hit tool. I think some scouts might even say he has a plus hit tool, and not really much else to his game, which is part of the reason why he hasn't gotten to the big leagues until now. And as you said, Common, in a blowout game against the Minnesota Twins, the Twins have a position player, Estadio, I believe is a shortstop on the mound, renowned for throwing a 47 mile per hour ephus pitch where it just kind of lobs it over the plate. I believe he got a strikeout on somebody earlier this season throwing that pitch. Well, he put one over the plate. It was a 3-0 count. Yermin Mercedes just tattoos it out of the ballpark. And after the game, Tony La Russa talks about how that's not how the game is supposed to be played, that was a disrespectful thing to do, that he wasn't paying attention to the take sign that the third base coach was allegedly putting up. And we can get into why there's issues with that to begin with. But then what really kind of melted down with this is that he kind of was, almost like acquiescing to the Twins and being very, I'm blanking on the word, but basically saying like, oh, I'm so sorry and bowing, 1,000 pardons. And then the next day, it kind of gives license to the Twins to throw behind Yermin Mercedes, which the pitch was low. It wasn't high, but it's dangerous to throw up behind somebody because your natural instinct when a pitch is coming at you is to duck backwards, not forward. So if you throw it behind somebody, you're actually increasing the chance that you can hit them. It was a really dangerous pitch. The pitcher got suspended 3 games. But then Tony La Russa came out after the game and defended the Twins throwing at his own player, which is a cardinal sin, pardon the pun for the former Cardinals manager, that you stick up for your guys, especially when it's against your rival. But under no circumstance should you be condoning or even kind of giving an okay to another team to throw at your player, which should be out of the game entirely to begin with. But that's kind of where we've gotten to. The White Sox have struggled since. I think that's more correlation than causation. They played a pretty good Yankees team over the weekend, getting swept for the first time this season, but definitely not a great spot for White Sox fans.
Yeah, and there was a whole lot. Real quickly, since we do mention the scenarios, 15-4. This was right after last week's show. I think night of after we recorded last week's show. 15-4 game, 2 outs in the 9th. The home run makes it 16-4. A couple other things that happened. Tim Anderson, one of the other White Sox stars, They're defending Mercedes on social media. So what's very interesting about this is you've got the players defending their own player after the manager calls them out. So and the other interesting thing is, as we know, Tony La Russa is an old man. He's an old school guy, and the White Sox are a pretty young roster filled with young stars. So that relationship remains to be seen what happens. They are 1-4 since that game, but again, you mentioned they played the Yankees at Yankee Stadium, a few close games that New York pulled out. So I don't know how much of it has to do with that. I think in baseball, chemistry doesn't matter as much as other sports, because I think guys are going to try to hit the ball no matter what. La Russa is a good in-game manager for the most part. I think he, depends. He's going to make the Hall of Fame. He's won the World Series.
He is in the Hall of Fame.
He is in the Hall of Fame already. Yeah. That's right. I don't know. It's one of those deals where I don't know how long La Russa is going to hang around, because the White Sox have an immense amount of talent. So if you're winning these games, he's going to be there. Certainly if he wins a World Series, he'll be there. But if the White Sox make the playoffs, maybe win one series, and then all of a sudden they don't make, say, the ALCS, because their talent level is at least Championship League Series or close to it. If they don't get there, all of a sudden La Russa's job could be on the line. I know he has a special relationship with Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner there, so that's why he got the job in the first place. But I do think that it's becoming more of a player's game. I know we see this a little bit more in the NBA, but we also see it a little bit in the NFL. And really, if we see it more in MLB, if anything, it will help the game, because the MLB struggles with star power more than any one of these other leagues. Name recognizability, however I'm saying that. I don't know what I'm saying, but I do think I agree with you 100%. I think La Russa should never have called out his player. Absolutely should not condone the player getting thrown at. I hate guys throwing at guys. I mean, it's a dangerous sport these days. These pitchers are throwing faster than ever. Certainly don't want any injuries. And I think that he had every right to swing at that ball and hit a home run. You play to win the game, Herm Edwards. You play for statistics. You play your best. What's the point? I get it. Like, it's different than as if you were stealing third base. He wasn't stealing third base. You go up there to hit. For a guy who's never been in the majors before, this is how he earns his money. This is how he earns his keep. So he's a competitor. If you're a competitor, you should always do the best you can in every situation. If the Twins and their broadcaster are mad that Mercedes hit a home run in that situation, well, don't get behind 15-4 and have your pitcher, who's a position player, in that game. So Mercedes had every right to swing in a home run. La Russa should shut up now. He should apologize, because people already look at him as the old man. He's already not that popular in Chicago. If the players turn against him, the fans turn against him, no matter how much Jerry Reinsdorf likes him, eventually he's not going to stay there. So he better hope the White Sox turn it around. Otherwise, he's going to be on the hot seat.
Drew, do you have anything to add? Or
no, I think you guys hit all the points. Swing when you feel like it. But
yeah, I mean, the one quick thing I will add as far as the old thing goes, I want to make it pretty clear that this isn't an ageist remark on Tony La Russa. I mean, you look at guys like Joe Madden. He's an older guy who's with it. You look at Bruce Bochy. You back?
Castleman, hold on. Castleman, we lost you for a second.
No, I had him.
We lost you.
You had him?
Yeah, I had him.
Really?
I was listening, yeah.
Oh, well, I didn't hear anything you said. All I heard is Bruce Bochy, who I know is the Giants'
if
former
Common
manager.
didn't hear, let's Castleman, go ahead and restart your sentence. If the great Common and Jeff didn't hear it.
I like hearing what Castleman has to say. I love his analysis. This has nothing to do with me. This has to do with Castleman and me hearing his opinion, because he's the resident White Sox fan. I'm a Cubs and Sox fan. I support both teams. I lean a little bit towards the Cubs, but I support Chicago as a whole. But I don't claim to be a diehard White Sox fan.
Let's hear Castleman's opinion.
Let's hear the diehard guy.
Well, it's just a matter in terms of, the comment that we have about him, being old, the game kind of passing him by. It's not necessarily an ageist remark, because you look at Joe Madden, he's with it. You look at Bruce Bochy. You even look at Dusty Baker, an old school manager. who's kind of learned and adapted with the game. Tony La Russa is kind of old in the mind. He hasn't really stayed with the game. I mean, he's literally forgotten a written rule of the game in a National League ballpark, putting a pitcher on second base instead of the runner ahead of him in the batting lineup. Maybe he should be worrying less about the unwritten rules of baseball that don't really matter and worry more about the written rules of baseball that can win and lose you games, which, by the way, I think he's lost more than his share, more than a manager should be losing for a team. But yeah, we'll see how it goes and see if the White Sox can win in spite of their one-time Hall of Fame manager.
And real quickly to that point, you mentioned Bochy, you mentioned Dusty Baker, I can't remember who else, but like those are guys who stayed in the game. They might have been out of a job maybe for 1 year, half a season, but La Russa hasn't managed in quite a while. So while those guys might be older, they've stayed in the game and they've physically watched it. I'm sure he's watched his fair share of ball games, but it's different than doing it every single day for 8-9 months out of the year, counting spring training. And honestly, it's a 12-month of the year type job where you're constantly tracking things and stuff like that. He hasn't been in that environment, and it, quite frankly, it shows.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we'll move on to the Champions League. Who's playing? Let's see. Manchester City and Chelsea. The Champions League final coming up on Saturday, right, Common?
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm wearing my Manchester City light blue here. Pep Guardiola, a legendary Barcelona player and coach. You can guess the way I'm going in this game. I think Manchester City right now is the best team in the world. You look at in the Champions League where it's mattered. They're 25 goals scored, 4 goals allowed, 11 wins and a draw in the Champions League this year. The only draw was the last game of the group stage when they've already won the group. So it was pretty much a meaningless game that they drew there. They've got the better players. Both these teams do it by committee. They don't have a necessarily dominant goal scorer, but Man City just has better players. Kevin De Bruyne is just a midfield maestro, just such a good passer of the ball. I will say this, though, that Chelsea have going for him is Thomas Tuchel, their manager. When he came in, Chelsea was in 9th place. All of a sudden, they're 4th place in the league, and he's already beaten Pep Guardiola of Man City, Jurgen Klopp, Jose Mourinho, Carlo Ancelotti, Diego Simeone, and Zinedine Zidane. So he's beaten some good teams. The last 2 times they played, Chelsea beat him in the FA Cup semifinals, 1-0. Then they beat him 2-1 in the Premier League. Although I will say this, that game, Man City certainly didn't play all of its players. But I think Man City's passing is going to be too good. They're going to control the ball. They're going to control the game. The only way for Chelsea to win is actually relying on an American star. Christian Pulisic out of the midfield is a very fast player. They're going to have to counterattack. If they get some Pulisic magic on the counterattack, I certainly could see Chelsea winning. But I'm going Man City. I'm going Pep Guardiola, one of the greatest, if not the greatest coach ever. He hasn't won the Champions League since he left Barcelona. Well, guess what? He gets it done winning the Champions League come Saturday. Go Pep.
I'll keep mine short and sweet. When I don't know what's going on, I'm going to pick the upset, so give me Chelsea.
Give me Man City. I'll actually agree with Common for the first time ever.
I love it. I love it. I know Drew likes Chelsea. He knew the Chelsea fight song a few years back. Chelsea upset Barcelona in 2012 when we were in college, and Drew was playing the Chelsea song for me. That was, I think, the semifinals in 2012, and I think Chelsea went on to win that Champions League. So they have done very well, certainly in the underdog role. I'll tell you that much, Castleman, for sure.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea has a great fight song, so I don't know.
You're looking forward to finding out the result, or are you actually going to try and watch this match? Because I doubt you'll be watching.
The first of those
when is it? Saturday?
Saturday
who's that directed to?
That was at Tom. I'm not. I don't know that you're going to watch it either, Drew, but certainly Tom. I would bet my money that he's not watching this game.
That's a mortgage bet.
That's a safe mortgage bet right there. There you go. I'll put that one in my mortgage bets, and all of a sudden I'll be about 500 just like that.
There you go. Well, speaking of bets, how about the locks of the week? Common, Do the recap.
Yeah. Locks of the week, another big week for the show, another really good week, adding more credibility to how we're doing. I had 2 wins, 0 losses, and a tie. Drew and Tom both going 2-1. I had the White Sox over the Twins, which we recorded early last week on Monday. Like this week, they won 16-4. That was that same game that we just talked about with Yermin Mercedes. I actually might have called that a mortgage bet. I can't remember, but I certainly felt like it was a mortgage bet. Got that one right. I had the Pacers -3 over the Hornets. How about this? The Pacers won 144-117, winning by 27. I did well there. Then the Grizzlies -4 over the Spurs. Grizzlies won by 4, getting me the wash there. Meanwhile, Tom had the White Sox over the Twins, that same game as me. 16-4. We both went right there. Easy win for the Sox. He had Dodgers -1.5 over the D-backs. He was correct there. Dodgers winning 3-1, playing really good baseball of late. And he had the Wizards over the Celtics. He got that one wrong. The Celtics won by 8. Drew got his WNBA first bet of the season in WNBA. Las Vegas Aces -1.5 over the Storm. They won by 16. He had a Calgary, Vancouver under 1.5 goals in the first period. 2-0 Vancouver after 1 period. They got a late goal in the first period, late in the first period, keeping Drew from a 3-0 week. And then, of course, he had the K-League, Korean Soccer League, Division 1, Gwangju versus Jeju United, under 2.5 goals. As Drew Brackett would say, ain't nobody scored in that game. 0-0, no goals anywhere close. So it's going to be a good week this week. Drew, what do you have to start us off?
Yeah, we'll start off with some tennis, the ATP Challenger Tour. It's the first round of the Emilia Romagna Open, and it's Tuesday morning in Italy. Tuesday morning here, but not in Italy. Regardless,
you didn't say that right. There's no way you said that right.
Emilia Romagna, yeah.
I think no. But go ahead. There's a mortgage bet for you, the pronunciation of that tournament. But go ahead, Drew.
Look it up. Emilia Romagna.
All right.
It could be like lasagna, where it needs a little bit more of like a yeah sound to it. Continue.
Anyway, I'll take, I can't remember our juice factor. Let me know if it's too much juice. But Steve Johnson versus Jiri Vesely, over 21.5 games in the match. That's at -145. Is that kosher?
That slides in under the door.
I think we decided -150. We'll give it to
150.
you.
150. Indiana Jones had that one. You got it.
There it is. Love it. And then we'll move on to the soccer, of course. Wednesday morning, the J1 League, Consadole Sapporo versus Sagan Tosu, possibly. Under 2.5 goals in that contest. And then the K-League 1, I should say, Saturday morning. We'll go back to this the Jeju United versus Ulsan Hyundai, under 2.5 goals.
Real quickly, Drew, one of my favorite players and teams is actually in the Japanese league. Andres Iniesta, former Barcelona legend, plays for Vissel Kobe. So I'm just waiting for you to make a bet on a Vissel Kobe game, but you've yet to do it. But certainly your Korean league knowledge is higher than anyone else that I've ever known, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, my soccer knowledge is pretty high, according to the bets.
Absolutely. The bets don't lie. Bets don't lie. You may not know how to say the team names. You may not know the players, but certainly the track record of your soccer bets speaks for itself, no doubt.
Absolutely. Tom, what do you got?
All right, so I'm going to continue a recent trend that I've had of putting a lock on my Chicago White Sox. Tough to find any value here. Lots of juice on them all over the place, so I guess I'll take them to cover -1.5 runs for +105 on the run line over the Cardinals. Cardinals have a lefty on the mound, and I think it's I'm going to butcher his name. It's Kwang Hugh Kim, I want to say. Mm-hmm. lefty on the mound, a decent lefty, but the White Sox absolutely destroy left-handed pitching. So give me the Sox plus or to cover -1.5. I'll go with an NBA player prop tonight. CJ McCollum over 22.5 points. And then we talked about this game earlier in the show. Give me the Milwaukee Bucks to cover -5 against the Miami Heat. Like I mentioned, Heat shot 40% beyond 3. Bucks only shot 16%. I look for the Bucks to be able to cover that 5 points there.
I'm going against you here. I'm going against you, Castleman. So I'll start with the first game that I have here against you. I've got the Heat +5 at the Bucks. Just like you said, Milwaukee struggled from 3. Well, Jimmy Butler struggled from all over the field. 4 for 22 for Miami. I expect a bounce-back game for him. This game could go either way in terms of who wins the game, but the fact that Miami gets a 5-point cover there, I like the 5 points. Heat are 3-3 in the last 2 regular seasons against Milwaukee, 4-2 in the last 2 playoffs. So Miami has really played Milwaukee tough the last couple of years. I think this is going to be a tight series. I think this is a game that Miami desperately needs if they're to win this series. I'm not convinced that they win this game, but I do think that it might go down to the last possession in the last minute. The only way I can see the Heat not covering is if free throws play a factor, and I'm hoping that doesn't happen late in the game. So give me the Heat +5 against the Bucks. Then I like the Mavs +6 at the Clippers. I think tomorrow night it is. Mavericks winning game 1. A triple-double for Luka Doncic. We talked about it earlier. LA keeps resting their guys. It keeps not giving them rhythm, and we see it in the playoffs last year. We're seeing it in the playoffs this year with Leonard and George both missing about 20 games. The Mavs pushed this Clippers team to 6 games last year without Kristaps Porzingis, and yet Vegas still likes the Clippers by 6 points. Oh, man, that's kind of a big line. I really think it's a big line. I mean, I can see LA winning game 2 because it's just about a must-win for them. But I think given what Dallas saw last year, they're going to want to win this game and close out this series as early as possible because they didn't play well late in the series last year. So I think Luka's the best player in this game. I think Luka continues to put on a show against the Clippers. We talk about Leonard and George, all these great defenders. Well, great offense beats great defense in the NBA. They couldn't stop Luka last year. They're not going to stop him tomorrow night. That's for sure. Give me the Mavs +6. And then finally, I think this line has gone down to 1.5. Lakers Suns, it was at 2 points. I'll take the half point, take the Lakers -1.5 over the Suns. Something we talked about earlier in the show. Anthony Davis was terrible, shooting 5 of 16. DeAndre Ayton had 21 points, 10 rebounds, making 10 of 11 shots. He outscored Anthony Davis. He out-rebounded Anthony Davis. He outplayed Anthony Davis. LeBron James was also not at his best in game 1. I don't think that DeAndre Ayton's going to outplay Anthony Davis again this series. I think Anthony Davis is going to wake up. He's going to get his butt back into paint where he belongs a little bit more instead of these outside jumpers constantly. I think LeBron has a triple-double probably in this game, but he has a LeBron James triple-double, which is 2 or 3 turnovers and 50% from the field. Not a Russell Westbrook triple-double, which is 5-6 turnovers, 35-40% from the field. He has a LeBron James triple-double, and LeBron and Davis show up. They get the Lakers back in this series. They win by 2 or more. And I think Drew and I are pretty close. I think I surpassed Drew for Locks of the Week records. And Tom Castleman.
You guys are even.
We're even. Castleman has us as even. And that's what I have too. So it's good.
Why did you say you surpassed me when we're even?
Well, I will surpass you.
Tie goes to the common.
I'm saying I surpass you after this week. We're even right now. I take the lead after this week.
Sure.
And Castleman is right on our hips lately, so it'll be good.
Of course he is. Well, I had a comment for the prop better over there. I was reading an article earlier, and Yusuf Nurkic, his over-under for rebounds is 10.5 in game 2, which is Monday night. That's tonight. 10.5 rebounds. and a bettor put $4,000 on it, which, prop bets, you don't usually see a lot of money put down on these because, a player could get hurt. It could be a blowout. There's just so much that you can't predict. But some person put $4,000 on the over 10.5 rebounds by Nurkic.
And I tell you what, going up against Jokic, I would take the under. So I don't think he's going to win that bet. Real quickly on the over, the prop bets, Castleman hasn't had very much luck on them. Recently, I didn't have luck. I know a couple weeks ago I had Steph Curry over 5.5 threes against the Mavericks. He had 5 threes after 3 quarters. He sat his butt down in the fourth quarter because they were down like 30 plus. So the prop bets are very dangerous because you might make what looks like a smart bet, but someone gets injured, someone sits down, stuff like that. So certainly don't advise that guy. I do think I saw something else online that a guy had bet his mortgage on the Blazers getting 42 wins. In the last game of the season, the Blazers got the 42 wins. So
that's a bunch of baloney. He didn't bet his mortgage. He replied, and there was a whole thing. And
it was on
somebody
Twitter.
said, how much did you bet, bro? He's like, $200, man. It's like, you didn't bet the mortgage. So that guy just wanted some attention from Dame Lillard.
So he was like Tom Castleman, but he actually carried through his tweets, getting the Damian Lillard attention, his favorite player on his favorite team, besides the Bulls, who actually Zach LaVine is pretty good. I was going to say the Bulls don't have anyone good, but Zach LaVine has had a career year, and he's gotten better each of the last 4 years, and all of a sudden he's got a co-star. Bulls might be in the playoffs come next year as like.
Oh, they better be.
Yeah, we'll see. We shall see.
Salute and statements time.
Yeah, absolutely. Drew, why don't you kick us off with your short and sweet salute?
Yeah, we'll get it out of the way. Well, we'll do kind of a salute to college sports right now. College baseball, college softball going on. Softball finished up the regionals this past weekend. They have the super regionals next weekend. College baseball has conference tournaments this week and the regionals the following weekend. So a heck of a time. A lot of baseball and softball on. ESPN carries them. So, just watch it during the week. It's going to be great.
Real quickly, Mizzou picking up a regional title, our alma mater. And they had a no-hitter. They had a one-hit shutout. I covered that Mizzou team most recently here, the previous 2 years before this last year. Larissa Anderson, by the way, Mizzou softball coach, one of the sharpest minds you'll meet, very well-spoken woman, very smart woman. Her husband also works in the Nationals organization, so they're a very big softball, baseball family. And, of course, doing Mizzou softball, Drew might remember this. This was like our sophomore and junior years. Some of my favorite memories of college, staying there that summer, and Drew and I doing play-by-play for Mizzou softball regionals, super regionals, and that's when the team would constantly make it. And I remember they had that heartbreaking loss against LSU our junior year. I just about cried. Chelsea Thomas pitched like 15,000 innings, didn't get enough run support. But so many good memories covering Mizzou softball, both in college and as a professional, and certainly good memories with both of you guys.
Absolutely. That was always fun.
Tom, what do you have?
For sure. So, for my statement of the week, everybody prepare to add a new face to the Mount Rushmore of American athletics, if not global international athletics. United States gymnast Simone Biles is continuing to add to her legend and to her legacy at the U.S. Classic. She became the first woman to perform a Yurchenko double pike in competition. So I'm going to go through what that is, and hopefully I have this all right.
It's a vault.
So it is a vault. It's a somersault with a half-turn roundoff on the springboard, a back handspring onto the diving table, and then 2 revolutions in pike position, legs straight and body bent at the waist. Like I said, no woman has ever done this in competition before, and Biles just continues to prove that she's kind of like she's almost like the Wilt Chamberlain, I think I saw somebody on Twitter say, of the gymnastics world, where she's just doing things that are unnatural for anyone else to be doing them. She has 4 gold medals from her time in Rio, in addition to 19 World Championship gold medals. And she has 30 medals total over her competitive career, which is 3rd all time. And she'll be passing second by the time she's in Tokyo this year, as the folks in front of her are 32 and 33 medals and retired.
Is Michael Phelps one of them, I think, right?
Oh, no, in gymnastics, I mean.
In gymnastics, okay.
Yeah. So the only thing that can slow her down is if, maybe the Olympics are postponed again in Tokyo. But I think we're going to, be seeing Simone Biles have another great Olympics coming up. She's 24 now. She probably has this one and then one more in her. So she's just going to be eons and eons ahead of anybody else in women's gymnastics and probably men's gymnastics too, if we're going to take away that gender divide on those sports. So, we had that discussion early on in our show as far as when we were re-kicking things off with our Mount Rushmore. Simone Biles put her face up there.
I have absolutely no problem with that. I think Simone Biles is becoming to me like Michael Phelps. I know they're different sports, but when I think of the Olympics, I thought of Michael Phelps and Usain Bolt. I was just having a conversation with my mom about the Olympics yesterday, and I told her, Mom, I don't know how I'm going to do the Olympics because Phelps and Bolt aren't there. But then I rebounded and said, but Simone Biles is there. I don't know if you guys know this. I'm an avid gymnastics fan. It's one of the things that Mom and I have bonded over the last few years since I was a kid, really. And my family are actually not big sports fans. Very surprising for people to hear, but no one in my family likes sports except for my mom and gymnastics and figure skating, which are things we get into the Olympics. So I grew up watching gymnastics as a kid. I was a huge fan of Shawn Johnson and Nastia Liukin back in 2008. The Beijing Olympics, and Simone Biles is just a phenomenon. She is so good. I don't know if she has one more Olympics after this just because the gymnasts tend to retire. Some say that she's old as a gymnast already for her age, but if someone can do it, it's certainly her. But you brought up the statistics, Tom. She should have no issues passing those statistics in Tokyo or whenever we do this next Olympics. Couldn't agree more. Speaking of all-time greats, not quite on Mount Rushmore, not quite on Simone Biles' level, but certainly one of the all-time great baseball players, Albert Pujols. A few weeks ago on this show, we talked about how the Angels let him go, who should pick him up. We listed teams we saw online. We listed teams we thought would be good fits. And nowhere did we list the Los Angeles Dodgers, the best team in baseball. And guess what? The Dodgers took a chance on Pujols, and it's working out pretty good for them because they're using them the way the Angels should have used them, and they're going about it the right way. He's only hitting 263, not quite where he used to hit with them, but guess what? He has 5 starts for the Dodgers and 5 RBI. This is a guy who's a clutch hitter. When they get the runners on, he finds a way. They've used him as a pinch hitter a few times also. They're basically starting him 2 out of 3 games right now and pinch hitting him some games where he doesn't play. So he's not per se 100% everyday starter, but he's good enough to start at least half the time. And he's a valuable piece, a guy who's played in the playoffs, a guy who could be a good locker room piece, a guy who can get clutch hits, what he's doing. And think about all the great players that have put on the Dodger uniform. Add Albert Pujols to that list, likely to retire as a Dodger, could retire with a World Series title. So you're talking about how bad it was for the Angels to let him go. He might actually luck out. He got to stay in LA. He went to a better team, and he could actually get himself another ring. So good for Albert Pujols, good for the Dodgers, good for baseball. As Michael Scott would say in The Office, it's a win-win-win scenario for everyone. You've never seen that episode, Drew?
I've seen it. I just had to laugh.
Excellent. Do you guys like Albert Pujols on the Dodgers? I mean, I think it's pretty cool.
Sure.
Fine. Yeah, he's actually playing okay now. I know I mentioned his WRC plus and how he wasn't really generating much offense. He seems to be doing a bit better in situational hitting with the Dodgers. So, maybe being on a World Series team has rejuvenated him a little bit. At least he didn't have to move very far.
Yeah, it was nice and easy for him. So, yeah, I mean, you want to see your stars go out the right way. Drew talked about this. It wasn't necessarily just that the Angels let him go. It was how they let him go. Albert Pujols isn't like per se, I'm not the biggest fan of his, but I think in general, he has to get a lot of respect for what he's done the last few years, and certainly I would love to see a good send-off for him there in LA. Now that he's not on the Cardinals, I know he hasn't been on the Cardinals for a while, but I always think of him as a Cardinal. And as a Cubs fan, never liked seeing him go up against the Cubs. So good news for Chicago that they don't have to deal with him until maybe the playoffs, if the Cubs can even get there, which they might. They might. In that weak division, the Cubs could pull out a playoff spot. I'd love to see a Cubs Sox World Series. That would be certainly exciting. So we'll see. We'll keep it tuned. We'll have all the latest updates on NBA. Maybe we'll hit on NHL in the coming weeks and much more. So keep it tuned to Salute Your Sports.